Friends, good day. Jean-Paul Sartre, he born in 1905 and he died in 1984. He was born in Paris and graduated from France. So he's he's known by his, I have in my hand now a book, Existentialism versus Marxism. This is a book about existentialist philosophy versus Marxism. So here I have in my hand Jean-Paul Sartre is a very famous essay. The name of this essay is Existentialism is a Humanism. It is originally delivered in lecture in Paris in 1945. So the existentialism is a humanism. This is a very important essay written by Jean-Paul Sartre about his philosophy of existentialism. Sartre's lecture Existentialism in this book is a humanism, seeks to accomplish two aims. A means to accomplish two aims. First, it tries to offer an accessible introduction to existentialist philosophy. Secondly, it tries to address some of the wide-ranging and often vicious criticism he received from other philosophers like French public and media. Secondly, Sartre opened by briefing outline in this essay, Existentialism is a Humanism, outlining some of principal criticism is doctrine as a seed from the denigration of existentialism by lay people who have tried to understand his philosophy to the communist complaint that existentialism refused to take action and forces too closely on the individualism. The biggest, according to Marxist people, they blame Sartre for existentialism, especially Sartre, that he is concerned more on individual than on the collective group interest. So also he had a severe criticism from the Christian accusation that existentialism is pessimistic and destroy all stand of moral judgment. Rather, Sartre says that existentialism is an optimistic, action-oriented philosophy that centers moral responsibility and people's interconnectedness with others. Sartre then defines existentialism for his audience. Its core idea is that existence precedes essence. Before existence is the first, then your essence will appear later. Unlike a manufactured object like a paper knife that is designed before it is created, he argues humans come into the world before they have definite values, purpose or character, whereas the paper knife essence precedes his existence. A human existence precedes his essence. The consequences of this fact is subjectivity, or one's freedom to define oneself through action. Since there is no pre-existing human nature, goal for human life, or divine mandate to act in a particular way, man is nothing more than what he makes of himself. A person is a human project, just the sum of their action. But they can also imagine what they will and should become in future. In other words, human life is a project in the noun sense and people project in the verb sense, an image of themselves in order to define their essence. This universal human predicament, which Sartre called the human condition, contrasts with the notion of essential human nature that earlier atheist is supposed to preserve the moral codes of religion while dispensing with God as a figurehead. Because the human condition is universal, the way any individual addresses it through their action expresses a set of values about what is good, For humanity as a whole, each person becomes responsible for all men, the creator and exemplar of a unique moral code for humankind. After finishing the basic sketch of core existential argument, Sartre turned to three central and often misunderstood concepts in existentialism: anguish, abandonment, and despair. The freedom to define one's value is also at the same time the obligation to define oneself in some way. And anguish is the painful realization of moral responsibility that accompanies choice, whereas Christians see existentialism as painful and pessimistic because of its relationship to anguish. Sartre argues that anguish is painful and pessimistic because of its relation to anguish. Sartre argues that as actually a consistent feature of all decision making. Rather, he says people have a tendency to make themselves believe that they are not in control of their own action, so they can avoid feeling responsible for their own action. So what happened that abandonment is, in fact, as Sartre passed it, people are condemned to be free because for believing God no longer and viable in modernity, people are left without predetermined moral compass and forced to answer for their choices. He gives example of a student and a Jesuit he meet in a prison camp to demonstrate that even people's passion and the sign that people see in the world when they influence action do not elevate responsibility for those action. Despair in French literary mean non-hope, means that people should think about circumstances rationally based on available information. Instead of having faith that their action will be rewarded or that forces they cannot see will resolve circumstances in their favor. Sartre returns to the criticism others have leveled against existentialism, now addressing them explicitly. He first responds to the notion that existentialism confines people to their individual subjectivity, argues that recognizing one's subjectivity is already recognizing the existence of other with parallel subjectivities. If you recognize your freedom, at the same time you will recognize the freedom of other people. So who are also confronting the human condition, the same human condition. Then he responds to the accusation that existentialism makes values meaningless. He compares the human project to work of art, while there is no predetermined measure for a good or bad artwork or life. So an artwork can still clearly be valuable because it expresses its own value. So structure and other offers a distinct perspective in the world. Similarly, the existentialism subject can express values even though they are one who determine those values. Sartre next responds to the Christian accusation that existentialism cannot morally judge other. He argues that judgment should properly consist not in judging another by one's own moral code, but rather by recognizing the inconsistencies in other moral paradigm. In other words, recognizing bad faith. Usually this bad faith consists of person in insistence that they have no choice to follow moral code that they have indeed chosen, that constitutes a denial of the character who, despite their opposition attitudes towards sex, he takes a morally equivalent because they both choose their paths for the sake of their freedom. These contexts with insistence where people would make the same choices because they feel they have no power to deny the passion or social expectations. These that encourage those choices. The final objection is existentialist values need not to be taken seriously. So to conclude this lecture, Sartre explains us the sense in which, contrary to the popular belief, existentialism is a humanism. He differentiates the humanism form of the thinker like sociologist Auguste Comte, who believed that every person has intrinsic value by virtue of their humanity. Sartre finds this illogical and wonders what the source of this value could possibly be when in fact man is constantly making people are not born inherently valuable, but rather constantly create the value in their own life. Rather, Sartre argues existentialism is humanist in the sense that it refuses to appeal to God to make sense of human condition and ground. The moral aim and truth of human life in human themselves. So existentialism is humanism. This is a very remarkable essay written by delivered by Jean-Paul Sartre, and this is existentialism give us a choice of freedom, that you have to choose between two alternate, maybe more than two alternate. You have a right, you have a freedom to choose what is best for you and what is also best for the entire humanity. So existentialism gives us a sense of freedom. It takes you from out of the religious dogma and determinism. And man existence precedes essence. First you have to exist, then you will determine your own essence, what you want to be. So I hope this is a very interesting essay written by Jean-Paul Sartre. Existentialism is a humanism. I hope you will enjoy it. When you read this is a very interesting book, Existentialism versus Marxism, a very beautiful debate by George Novak written. Thank you very much for patient listening.